All right. So thank you so much, Anant, for joining our podcast. It's amazing to have you here. So a quick intro about this podcast. We just wanted to have a conversation with as many people as we can, and just interesting conversations. I'm currently doing my BCom honors at Christ University, Bangalore, and my friend Manu here is doing electrical engineering at UMass Amherst. And yeah, we are friends from high school, and we've started this podcast with that aim to connect to as many people. I've known Anand from my time at YPC, and yeah, I was part of the Economics and Trade Committee. So as soon as I got to know about Anand, I thought, okay, we should definitely have him on our podcast. So a quick intro about him. He is currently studying at Stanford, and he and I got to know him through Youth Policy Collected, an organization he co-founded with Sarang Fulvaria and Aisha Tharane. And the organization has grown to be quite impressively international, with people from all over the world. So I would just like to start off with just about the organization itself. Looking back, you had that challenge of scaling the organization. I think like people from over 40 schools or something like that. So looking back,
Mhm.
what were your major successes?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me, guys. Aditya and Manu. I mean, it's great to be contacted by YPC people at any point, and I'm always happy to be involved. Looking back, I think you mentioned 40 schools. Yeah, that was one of our kind of big talking points. Just having a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds being included on the platform and contributing to that discourse. I think yeah, that's something that it really happened quite organically. It was kind of we built out the organization during COVID, so it was completely online. We had, I mean, the only physical meetings that I'm aware of were between Sarang, Aisha, and myself, just the co-founders in Mumbai because we were all based there. But I think yeah, just the nature of work at that point and the nature of kind of organization, social organization as a whole, kind of allowed us to have people from some people working in like Malaysia or the UAE, collaborating together at the same time. So that was definitely like a unique opportunity that arose from the challenge of COVID. Um, but yeah, I think some of the key kind of metrics that we kind of kept an eye on were just, of course, number one, how many people were in the organization. We wanted to have a team that was, diverse and large, but not too large. Where it became unwieldy from an administrative point of view. So I think at our peak we had about 150 members from eight countries and 40 different high schools and a couple of colleges here and there. So yeah, I think that honestly, I would say that a lot of it was very organic. There was a lot of Instagram marketing that we used. We kind of put out a few posts on Instagram and just promoted those. Used, a little bit of ad money, not very much. And I think the key understanding that I got from that was as long as what you're offering, I wouldn't say like a member, a YPC member, a prospective YPC member, as long as what we were offering them was, something that was that created value for them in their lives, there would be like inherent kind of an inclination to join. So we focused on, demographics that wanted to have, a say in policy making. So we found the right age, 14 to 19. We found the right locations. We focused on like major metropolitan cities, but we focused on not just metropolitan cities like Mumbai and Delhi. We focused on tier two cities as well. Um, you know, um, I mean, this huge list that we kind of reached out to schools, to organizations, a lot of cold calling, a lot of cold emailing to schools and youth organizations across India. And then after a while, it just became word of mouth marketing, where it's again, it's not like we were trying to sell anything to any of our members. We weren't really selling a product. There was no money involved at all. It's just it was an invitation to be part of a community, and I think people very seldom say no when they see a community that kind of you know it resonates with their identity.
That's really interesting because I remember like I was working with Kanav Batra, who's also from Delhi, but at the same time people
Mhm.
from Pune, Hyderabad, and one young, I mean, someone of my age was from Pakistan as well. And that was,
Hmm.
yeah, I found that really interesting because I think if especially if you're based out of South Asia, I think our parents are really encouraging anything to do with science and mathematics, but anything to do with policy and politics, they have that. I don't know why that's ingrained in our culture, especially, but anything to do with politics, they are almost fearful. They don't want to enter that world, and it's only when you interact with these stakeholders, we have our own perceptions. A lot of it, which is influenced disproportionately by our media consumption. We have our own biases, and when you interact with these stakeholders, you realize, okay, no, not everyone is corrupt. A lot of people are trying to do the right thing. It's really, really difficult. And I also read this article you, Sarang, and Aisha wrote for the Times of India, and yeah, that's a very common theme. That I mean, it goes without saying that today some of the challenges that we are facing, it's so hard to say, okay, you cannot participate. It's so, especially the youth, it's so much better if you could just compound the brain power that so many people bring to the table. It's very difficult. So that I think that those values were perfectly imbibed by YPC. Now you have started a very different chapter, which is college. And here at Stanford, how do you plan on? I mean, not exactly through the framework of YPC, but policy in general. How do you plan on continuing this work, given the wealth of resources at Stanford?
Definitely, I think that's a great question and one that I ask myself very often. Um, I think coming to Stanford, I think I'm just starting college, and I'm sure you guys might also have encountered. It's just a time where you kind of have to explore. You kind of have to let go of a few things that you did in high school. Kind of just I've spent a lot of time breaking down my identity so I can rebuild it and reshape it in college. So honestly, I haven't been into policy work at Stanford from the get go. I Coming back to your point on technology, science, and policy versus policy and politics. I think it shouldn't really be placed as a one or the other kind of discussion. I think they're both so kind of intertwined and so
Yeah.
interrelated that right now I'm using this opportunity at Stanford to build a background in both. Right. I think placing myself at that intersection is where I will find what I'm passionate about and where I'll also be very useful. You know, to creating a better society, to kind of contributing to development, that kind of stuff. And I think in terms of how exactly I'm going about that, honestly, as most other college students would be, I've looked at joining interesting clubs, interesting student organizations. I've even like sketched out a few ideas of my own student organization that I might want to found. I'm taking classes that are from a variety of backgrounds. I went into college thinking, okay, I'm interested in public policy, maybe some economics, environmental science, and I wasn't really too focused on computer science or engineering or any of that stuff, right, or math. But coming to Stanford, the first class that I signed up for was actually a CS class. So I think that's been key for me. Just making sure that I'm not pigeonholing myself into one particular area. I think in order to be effective in whatever I do in the future, whether that's public policy, whether that's something else, I think I need to have a background in everything.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I'm spending my time doing here.
That's amazing. And you've planned to major in economics, or is that too early to say?
um, yeah, I've been flip flopping. So I think I came in thinking probably public policy, but that's changed to economics now. As of now, I'm thinking economics with a co-term. So Stanford has this like 4+1 program where you stay an extra year and for your master's degree. So I'm thinking doing my bachelor's degree in economics and then a master's degree in computer science. Um, or either computer science or some form of engineering. Just having that blend of kind of economics and humanities focused studies in undergrad, and then technical kind of skills in my master's program. So again, there's a lot of time for that to
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
that out.
No, I
Uh,
don't want to pressure you or anything.
no, no, no. As of now, that's the plan.
All right,
I
that's
think I'm kind of
great.
probably doing the exact opposite of what you're doing. I came in as an engineer into university. and I've been taking more
Uh-huh.
and more business classes and moving on towards that side. Planning on probably doing something in management or finance, but not focused in on it as yet. The Focus On program is quite interesting though, because UMass also offers something of the sort, and I'm still quite what do you call it, conflicted whether I want to actually stay that extra year at university or do something
Yeah.
in the real world, so to speak.
And that's
I
fair. I
think,
mean, so you go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think it's a very common kind of path that I see even here. A lot of people who came in thinking CS or engineering, kind of switch to finance or economics or that kind of path. And honestly, I feel like that's the whole point of university, just to find out what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. And yeah, I think that's the great part of studying in the US. I think it gives you that flexibility. Um, and yeah, I would say definitely pursue that, right? Pursue different paths as like not just what you came in to do.
That's so interesting because I think a lot of people maybe head into technical areas wanting to make a change in the world, but at the same time, like I think we don't fully comprehend how stunningly successful economics as a social science is. That no other social science even comes close. I mean, to even try and understand that proper central banks are using some of the basic principles to really control. That's really interesting. That I think you can go on to explore. Now, going back to a bit to YPC, it had
Uh-huh.
various committees, and I got to meet so many people from so many backgrounds. So how did that exactly come? Going to bit to the administrative side, what were some of the challenges, and how did it actually come out like that?
Right. So I think it's great that you raised the challenges because that's something that we haven't really had an opportunity to discuss, right? We don't. While we were running the organization, I think we didn't want to showcase too many of the challenges behind the scenes to the members themselves because that would have become quite unwieldy. But it was definitely of work to run an organization that size. At times, it felt like a second, like a full time job in addition to school, right? So, but I think the fundamental kind of the linchpin of our system of the entire organization was the leaders that we chose, right? Of course, there was the founding team. We kind of orchestrated stuff on a kind of on a larger level, but even within the committees, we focused on uh, identifying people who are talented, people who are like very motivated and very involved, and who are very passionate about the mission of the committee and of the organization itself, right? And we appointed them into leadership positions. I think choosing the right people for these leadership positions was the most important decision that we made from an organizational standpoint, right? From a structural standpoint, as long as we had the right people in those positions, the committee was generally quite productive. Um, and that's it's very easy to say that now, but identifying the right person was a very difficult task in and of itself, right? Sometimes it's just like a gut feeling. Okay, this guy or this girl is or this person is right for this job, right? Or sometimes it's really digging um, into like interviews or digging into just like perusing like our past WhatsApp chats and seeing who was kind of involved, right? So I would say internal leadership is one especially important thing. I think another one was establishing a solid kind of organizational structure. Um, so this is something that we spend a lot of time figuring out. How do we want to structure the organization? What committees? What does the leadership structure look like? What do a member's responsibilities look like? And how do we do division of labor, division of tasks, right? And I think that's actually one thing that, looking back, I might have done differently. I think we kind of made it a little bit rigid in terms of the fact that we had these committees and these people doing these things for these committees, and then like a couple of support communities like our outreach group or the website development team. Um, I would actually want it to be a bit more fluid and have division of labor be done amongst the members themselves as opposed to from the top down. I have no idea if that would have worked, but I think it might have been worth a try. Another another important thing that kind of really helped the organization function smoothly was the leaders, right? So both the founding team and kind of the committee chairs had to have a very good idea of who they were leading. So I don't know if you remember your YPC interview, but we really focus on getting to know each of our members on a personal level, right? I feel like that's the only way you can learn how to communicate with such a diverse group of people effectively. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to understand what motivates them, what they want to do, where they want to be, right? Once you understand that as a leader, I think then you can communicate effectively. So that was something we focused on within ourselves, Aisha, Sarang, and I, and our the leaders for for our committees.
That's so interesting because I remember had it not been for Kanav, and he was so adept at coordinating all activities, it really felt like okay, this is a significant time commitment, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is something really fulfilling. And that
Mm-hmm.
research paper, I think I randomly got a mail quite like a few months after the paper had been published that it had like cited some top 10 download lists on SSRM.
Wow, yeah.
And yeah, it was extremely fulfilling. And I want to get to the summit. You had a YPC Climate Summit, which was it must have been really nerve wracking, I would assume, because you had Jayant Sinha in attendance, along with extremely influential people from business, finance, and the like. Could you talk a bit about how that summit came together?
Right. So, well, it was kind of organized by myself and a team of YPC people, right? Like there were like 15 people kind of all working together on that summit. And you I wouldn't say I was that nervous, to be honest. I feel like it was just I was just very thrilled to have that opportunity to bring together like 250 300 people just to talk about climate, because I'm very passionate about climate. I love reading about it. I love researching about it. I love talking about it, and eventually I want to do something about it, right? So having that opportunity to have people who are actually involved, like in an influential way on all of these topics was just amazing, right? It was just phenomenal. YPC, we always focused on building a good network. I think as an institution, kind of positioned as we were, which is like youth focused, with kind of working with government organizations, working with corporates, working with NGOs. We really had to have access to the right people, the right places, and that there were multiple avenues we used. There was, of course, like connections within the YPC community. Someone's mom knew somebody, or somebody's chacha was at the IFC or whatever, some stuff like that, right? So that's where just communicating within the organization was important. And then external communication. A lot of our NGO partners, especially at the first, like the beginning and middle stage of YPC, they were completely organic. So we just made a list. We had like a big Excel sheet of all these NGOs, not just in India but Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, all across Asia, really. And we just cold emailed a lot of them. Just literally just sent an email from the YPC account. We had an outreach team that was kind of working on that, and that's how we got connected with these individuals. Coming specifically to the Climate Summit, it was much more of our kind of internal network, so family and friends of YPC. Um, and of course, very lucky, very grateful to have those connections. But in the end, I think the reason it really worked is because there was a value proposition for everyone involved, right? From obviously from a student side, from YPC sides, the value proposition is obvious. We have just a platform for our members and our community to be involved with like the most influential people in this space, right? So that's YPC's value proposition. A value proposition for someone like Jayant Sinha or some of the industry leaders that we had is that they genuinely enjoy working with youth, right? And they value their impact on the youth. And as soon as we positioned it that way, I think it was very easy to get our foot in the right door. So that was it was definitely work. Looking back, I feel like I've suppressed the amount of work that I remember it being, but it was very very worth it in the end. Yeah.
Uh, what would be your favorite moments from the summit?
From the summit, well, I think just the opportunity to talk to Jan Sinha, one on one. That was great for me. But honestly, my favorite moment was the YPC Environment Committees presenting their work. Right, I think
Right.
that was from the very start. That was what the goal of YPC was, to have the youth's voice in policy. Right, so we had like 5 or 6 of our members present the work that they had been doing on the legal personhood of the environment. They presented that to industry leaders, they presented it to politicians, they presented it to civil society, and like 200 other people in the audience. Right, I think that was, when I look back, and I was like, YPC achieved its goal in that moment. Right, so that's why that was a very meaningful moment for me. I don't remember. I don't know if you remember, but also we had Donovan. So Donovan was one of the YPC
Donovan
Environment
Fig,
Committee
yeah.
members. Yeah, Donovan Fig, right? And I think his moderation of the fireside chat with a bunch of the industry leaders was just amazing. It was
Yeah,
simultaneously very funny and very
I
very
remember.
meaningful, right? So yeah, exactly. It's very memorable. So that was also. I mean, I think that entire. I remember that entire, like, whatever, hour and a half, 2 hours very vividly.
That's great. That's great. And prior to YPC itself, you had experience working with government agencies. And
Mhm.
how would you say those experiences contributed to your time shaping YPC?
Right. So I think there were not just with like government agencies. I think I had a lot of experiences leading up to YPC, which had two big impacts. I think one was they got me very passionate about policy, and kind of let me see how policy was like this tool that could shape millions of lives. Right. I feel like my one of my biggest motivations, if not my biggest motivation, is impact. I feel like I live my life to create as much of a positive impact on my communities and the people around me as possible. And policy, over time, I realized that policy is like the greatest instrument to do that. If I could, I'll point out an actual instance where I realized that while working for Niti Aayog. So I was working with Niti Aayog and the Quality Council of India on a project called Project
Yeah.
Unnati, and it's the world's largest, like, a labor exchange platform, digital livelihood platform for blue and gray collar workers. So there's we I was part of this like 35 member team, uh, focused on just creating this online platform for construction workers, government workers, people in the textile industry, to kind of to find livelihood opportunities, right? And
Yeah.
that showed me how government policy combined with technological innovation can really lead to large scale impact. And so that's one thing that got me very interested in policy. Then the second thing is, a lot of my prior experiences equipped me with the skills necessary to found an organization, to operate an organization, and I think this is the most important thing, and to work with people effectively. Right. So I've been doing MUN, as I'm sure so many of your listeners might be doing MUN. I've been doing MUN since like fifth grade, and that gave me another inkling as to the impact of policy. But it also taught me how to work with people very well. Right. How to reach conclusions, how to reach agreements, how to compromise, how to communicate effectively. I think that MUN and working with this organization called the Alpha Urbane Project, which was a youth leadership organization in Mumbai, that I really learned those people skills through those experiences. And I've actually, before YPC, way back in like seventh grade, I had my first entrepreneurial venture, my first kind of uh, venture into founding my own business, with this company that never really became a company, called Best in Town. And that was it was through this academy called the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, and it was just a crash course in entrepreneurship. And this idea came out of that. And Best in Town was like, I was very into football at that point, and I
Yeah.
I wanted to create like an online community for sports players and amateur sports players in India, right? Because I thought that this doesn't exist. Why not start something so that people can organize and find teams, find ways to play, like, play sports, right? So that was kind of my first half-baked business idea. And since then, it's just been, it's something that once your mind is kind of oriented that way, always looking for opportunities, looking for, what doesn't exist that should exist. Um, that's when you're really equipped to found your own organization. And I'll actually talk about how YPC was founded here because I think it's a very important story.
Yeah.
It was so Sarang, Aisha, and I were actually very good friends from at this organization called the Alpha Urbane Project, right? And we were all just on a Zoom call one day during COVID. We got onto the of Dalit rights, right? So at this moment in time, like Dalit rights were really big in the news, and we had a very interesting, very heated conversation about Dalit rights. And at the end, I think somebody said, it's a shame that this will never really go anywhere. All this conversation, all this dialogue won't actually change anything. We're just talking about it for the sake of talking about it, right? And I think that's when I realized that it doesn't have to be like that. And so I had a couple of post-its next to me. So I started like writing ideas down on the post-it. And I had just learned of what a think tank was like maybe a couple of months before that. So I was like, why not a think tank for the youth? So that our discussions like this actually go somewhere as opposed to fizzle out into nothing. So it's a lot based on conversation, just having really meaningful conversations with your friends about, your own lives, but also the things around you, the kind of the issues of our day. All the there's so many interesting things to focus on in the world and so many interesting topics to talk about that I think it's really a shame if you don't talk about them with your friends or with the community. So I think that's in kind of stoking my passion for YPC and for policy.
That is so interesting, especially the points you made about policy. I think it's so easy to slip into that defeatist mentality, but even if you look slightly broader into the bigger picture, some of the most impressive achievements have originated from a very handful of universities and they have spread to every corner in the world. Just within this century, 22 years in, we have done so much to advance gender equality, for example, or spread technology and medicine to such remote these are not really innovations that were these are very recent innovations we 19-year-olds get to take for granted. And I think that's the institutions that we take for granted, they come at a price. These institutions have been built for by great individuals, and I'm sure they would have had more reasons to get discouraged than us, who definitely are starting at a much higher platform. So I think that's really interesting. So, well, so far this has been amazing. And I think my last question to you would be slightly on the personal side. I think you were at the end of the day a high school student, and many of our listeners, I think, will be right into that demographic. And I think, could you talk? You have mentioned it like before that it was almost like having a second part-time job on the side. So just a bit on the time management. How did you exactly go? I think COVID was helpful, which is, I don't think those three words should ever be put together.
Yeah.
We're gonna get
That's
cancelled.
fair though. That's fair.
Yeah, because it did not going to school all the time wasted on commute, so we did have extra time on our hands. But even despite that, just the workload that comes organizing an organization of that scale. So could you talk a bit more about that direction? Hopefully, tips for younger individuals.
Yeah, for sure. I think time management is absolutely one of the most essential skills that you can develop. But I would actually preface this by saying, don't be too hard on yourself. Honestly, I feel I wasn't great with time management for the longest time, right? Until maybe like 10th grade. That was consistently one of my worst traits. Right? I was never good at organizing my time efficiently. But what I realized is when you find a project or find things that you're passionate about, you force yourself to become better at time management. I think the reason why I was able to balance the rest of my life is because I was able to focus on organization, right? And that's genuinely what I wanted to do. It wasn't like a means to an end, right? It wasn't like I did YPC to get into college. I did YPC because I wanted to be in that room. I wanted to be with, with all these amazing young individuals talking about amazingly important topics, right? And so I feel like if as long as you're passionate about something, it'll be much easier to find the time to do it effectively. The other thing I would say is, and this is something I see in a lot of high school students when they're trying to, find found their own venture or create an organization or things like that. Don't go it alone. I know there's always a kind of anxiety that if I work with someone, will I get credit? Will it be as impressive? Honestly, leave all of that. Focus on the actual impact itself, right? Focus on the quality of the organization as opposed to just your role in it, right? I could not have done YPC without Sarek and Aisha, and I could not have done it without all of the YPC members themselves, right? So creating creating community and bringing people along with you, I think that's it. Like reduces the workload significantly because even if you might think you're good at everything, there's people who are more effective, who are more suited to different roles than you are, and having the right people in the right roles is what makes a successful organization in my eyes. Um, yeah, so 100% try working with other people. Work with at least a few friends at the very start. Um, there's a lot of resources to organize your time efficiently. Whether that's personally or for like your own project, if you want to kind of establish objectives, kind of reflect. I think reflection on what you've been up to and kind of your own journey so far is extremely important. I think that that was something that we did very frequently at YPC, at least the founding team. We used to get on calls because we were genuinely very good friends outside the committee, outside the organization as well. But we would get on calls and we would just talk about YPC and what we think about what we've done so far and how that should shape what we do in the future. Everyone should do that at an individual level. Reflect on your experiences in the past. Reflect on the decisions that you've made in the past. Um, reflect on what you're doing right now. Reflect on who the person you are right now, and identify things that you might want to change. You might want to improve. And after that, I think there's so many resources out there to learn. If you want to learn a new skill, there's so many resources. If you want to learn how to manage your time more effectively, I think some resources is pretty straightforward, like just using a calendar, or just you know collaborating on a shared communication platform that keeps you in check. Um, and working with friends keeps you in check a lot. But there's a lot of resources out there to learn how to manage your time effectively. I would say the most important thing is finding something you're passionate about, and then working with other people to accomplish shared objectives, right? Shared with a shared mission.
That's amazing because so many people they find exactly those activities with only a lens to get into college, and I think that is so myopic in the even in the short run. I think you cannot dedicate significant amounts of time, money, or energy, or any resources that you have if you are not passionate about it. At the end of the day, it's about something you like, enjoying what you do. It's something really basic and might be overlooked because people are extremely motivated and they want to get into the best college. But I think to be so focused on that one particular goal, it really impairs your ability to develop. There's so many things you don't know that you might enjoy, and just that process of exploration that's severely underrated. And I think I just got to learn just being around people from such a variety of backgrounds. That in itself is such a learning opportunity. It has been really enriching. So I can definitely talk about my time, and so has this interview been. So thank you so much for doing this. I think we have come to our end. We've figured that once we go beyond the 30-minute threshold, people suddenly cut off there. I think they throw away their phones. so I don't know what's wrong. So we're making it shorter a bit. But thank you so much for. Is there anything else you'd like to add? You anything regarding?
Nothing from my side. Again, thank you so much for having me, and obviously feel free to reach out to me whenever for whatever you want, podcast wise or just personally.
Absolutely.
Always happy to help. Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone who's listening.
This has been really fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks Aditya.
All
Nice
right.
to meet you, Manu. And
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
log
you.
off now. See ya. Have a good one.
Absolutely. Bye.